My name is Sarah Mitchell, and I need to tell you about the day my family chose a party over my life. But to understand how we got there, you need to know about Emma. Emma is my younger sister, and from the moment she took her first breath, she became the center of our universe. I was 2 years old when she was born, but somehow I already knew my role had changed forever. Growing up in suburban Toronto, our house was filled with Emma's artwork stuck to every surface, her dance recital photos lining the hallway, and her participation trophies crowding the mantelpiece. Meanwhile, my honor roll certificates were tucked away in a drawer, and my debate team victories were mentioned once at dinner before the conversation inevitably shifted back to Emma's latest creative endeavor. Don't get me wrong. I loved my sister. I really did. Emma had this infectious laugh, and this way of seeing the world that made everything seem brighter. She could turn a rainy Saturday into an adventure, just by suggesting we build a fort in the living room. But somewhere along the way, loving Emma became synonymous with disappearing myself. When Emma decided she wanted to be a dancer at age 7, our parents immediately enrolled her in the most expensive studio in the city. They drove her to competitions every weekend, bought her hundreds of dollars worth of costumes, and hired private coaches. When I expressed interest in debate club that same year, I was told to find something less expensive and think about the family budget. By high school, the pattern was crystal clear. Emma got the brand new car for her 16th birthday because she needed reliable transportation for her auditions. I got the used Honda with 150,000 miles on it because I was more responsible and could handle an older vehicle. When it came time for college, our parents took out a second mortgage to send Emma to an expensive arts program in New York. She has such a gift. Mom would say, tears in her eyes. We can't let financial constraints limit her potential. I applied for every scholarship I could find, worked 2 part-time jobs, and took out student loans to pay for my marketing degree at the University of Toronto. I graduated summa cum laude with zero help from my parents, while Emma dropped out after 2 years to find herself in Europe on their dime. But here's the thing that still breaks my heart. I kept believing that if I just worked harder, achieved more, proved myself worthy, my parents would finally see me. So I threw myself into my career. I landed a marketing director position at a tech startup by age 26, bought my own condo, and started contributing to my parents' retirement fund without them even asking. Emma, meanwhile, drifted from one passion project to another. First it was photography, then jewelry making, then life coaching, then vintage clothing restoration. Our parents funded every single venture with enthusiasm and pride. Emma's just finding her path. Dad would explain when I questioned why they'd given her another $10,000 for a business that lasted 3 months. I never asked for money. I never asked for help. I just kept working, kept achieving, kept hoping that one day they'd look at me with the same pride they reserved for Emma. Then Emma met Jake Richardson. Jake came from old money, the kind of Canadian family that owned half of downtown Vancouver, and had a ski chalet in Whistler. He was charming, successful, and completely smitten with my free-spirited sister. When Emma announced their engagement, you would have thought she'd won the Nobel Prize. Mom immediately started planning what she called the wedding of the century. Dad opened a special savings account and started talking about taking out another loan. They hired the most expensive wedding planner in the city, booked the fanciest venue, and ordered custom invitations that cost more than my monthly car payment. Every family dinner became a wedding planning session. Every phone call was about flowers or venues, or the guest list that somehow grew from 50 people to 200. Emma glowed with all the attention, and honestly, I was happy for her. Despite everything, I wanted my sister to have her dream wedding. But deep down, in a place I barely admitted to myself, I wondered what it would feel like to have my parents care about something in my life with even half that enthusiasm. I threw myself into helping with the wedding planning. I used my marketing connections to get discounts on vendors. I spent my weekends addressing invitations and researching photographers. I even offered to pay for the flower arrangements because I could see the stress on Dad's face when he looked at the mounting costs. Sarah's always been so practical, Mom would tell her friends. She has such a good head for these details. Practical. That was my role in the family. The reliable one. The responsible one. The one who solved problems and never created them. Emma was the dreamer, the artist, the one whose feelings mattered. I was the one who made sure everyone else's dreams came true. And for 28 years I told myself that was enough. I told myself that being needed was the same as being loved. I told myself that my worth came from what I could do for others, not from who I was as a person. I had no idea that in just 3 months, this family dynamic that I'd accepted my entire life would be tested in a way that would change everything forever. Because sometimes life has a way of showing you exactly where you stand with the people you love most. And sometimes that truth is more devastating than anything you could have imagined. Artifacts. Function_calls artifacts. Invoke name equals artifacts artifacts. Parameter name equals command, update / artifacts. Parameter artifacts. Parameter name equals ID. Section _script / artifacts. Parameter artifacts. Parameter name equals old_str. End of section. 1 word count. 1047 words. Estimated reading time. 7 to 8 minutes / artifacts. Parameter artifacts. Parameter name equals new_str. End of section. 1 word count. 1047 words. Estimated reading time. 7 to 8 minutes. Section 2. The Diagnosis Bombshell AI Voice. Script American/Canadian characters. It was a Tuesday morning in February, when my life changed forever. I was getting ready for work, going through my usual routine when I felt it during my monthly self-exam. A small hard lump in my left breast that definitely hadn't been there before. My heart stopped. Literally stopped for what felt like 10 seconds. I stood there in my bathroom frozen, hoping that if I just waited long enough, it would disappear. But when I checked again, it was still there. Real. Undeniable. I called my doctor's office the moment they opened. Dr. Patricia Williams had been my family physician since I moved to Toronto for work. She was this calm, reassuring woman in her 50s who always made time for her patients. "Sarah, I want you to come in today," she said when I described what I'd found. Her voice was gentle but serious. "Let's not wait on this." The next few hours felt like I was moving through thick fog. I called in sick to work, drove to Dr. Williams' office, and sat in that sterile examination room trying to convince myself this was all just a precaution. But when Dr. Williams finished her examination, her face told me everything I didn't want to know. "I'm going to refer you to a specialist," she said, washing her hands at the sink. "Dr. Rebecca Chan at Toronto General Hospital. She's one of the best oncologists in the city." Oncologist. The word hit me like a physical blow. "I want you to have a mammogram and possibly a biopsy," Dr. Williams continued. "We need to know exactly what we're dealing with." I somehow managed to drive home, but the moment I closed my apartment door behind me, I completely fell apart. I sat on my kitchen floor and cried until I couldn't breathe. At 28 years old, I was potentially facing cancer. Cancer. The mammogram was scheduled for Thursday. I'd never had one before, and the technician, Linda, was incredibly kind. She explained every step of the process, but I could see the concern in her eyes when she kept taking additional images of the same area. "The radiologist will review these and get back to your doctor within 24 hours, she said, helping me back into my gown. Those 24 hours felt like 24 years. Friday afternoon, Dr. Chen's office called. The mammogram showed irregularities that required a biopsy. Could I come in Monday morning? I spent the weekend in a state of numb terror. I researched everything I could about breast cancer, which was probably the worst thing I could have done. Statistics, survival rates, treatment options. All of it swirled around in my head until I couldn't think straight. The biopsy itself wasn't as bad as I'd imagined, but waiting for the results was torture. Dr. Chun explained that it would take 3 to 5 business days to get the pathology report. I didn't tell my family about any of this. Emma's wedding was just 3 months away, and every conversation in our family revolved around seating charts, menu tastings, and dress fittings. How could I inject my medical scare into their perfect wedding bubble? Besides, I kept telling myself it was probably nothing. Just a benign cyst or fibrous tissue. Women find lumps all the time, and most of them turn out to be harmless. But on Thursday morning, Dr. Chen's nurse called and asked me to come in that afternoon to discuss the results. Not over the phone. In person. I knew before I even walked into her office. Dr. Chun was a small, elegant woman with kind eyes and graying hair pulled back in a neat bun. She gestured for me to sit down across from her desk, and I noticed she had a box of tissues within easy reach. "Sarah, the biopsy results show that you have invasive ductal carcinoma," she said gently. "It's breast cancer." The room started spinning. I heard her words, but they felt like they were coming from underwater. Cancer. I had cancer. "I know this is overwhelming," Dr. Chun continued, "but I want you to know that we caught this relatively early. The tumor is about 2 centimeters, and from what I can see on your scans, it appears to be localized." She explained that I would need surgery, most likely a lumpectomy, followed by chemotherapy and possibly radiation. The exact treatment plan would depend on additional testing to determine the cancer's specific characteristics. "Time is important here," she said, leaning forward. "This type of cancer can be aggressive, especially in younger women. I'd like to schedule your surgery within the next 2 to 3 weeks. 2 to 3 weeks. Emma's wedding was in 12 weeks, but suddenly that felt impossibly far away. "What if we wait?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. "What if we wait a month or 2? Dr. Chen's expression grew serious. "Sarah, I wouldn't recommend delaying treatment. Every week we wait allows the cancer more time to potentially spread. Early intervention gives us the best chance of complete recovery." I nodded, trying to process everything she was telling me. Surgery in 2 weeks. Chemotherapy that would last months. Hair loss. Fatigue. Nausea. Missing work. The whole terrifying journey of cancer treatment stretched out in front of me. But I was going to beat this. I had to beat this. "Can I bring someone with me to the next appointment?" I asked. "To help me remember everything?" "Of course," Dr. Chun smiled. "I always encourage patients to bring support. Do you have family here in Toronto?" I thought about my parents who lived just 40 minutes away in Mississauga. I thought about Emma, who was currently staying with them while planning the wedding. I thought about how I would tell them that their practical, responsible daughter now needed them more than she'd ever needed anyone in her entire life. "Yes," I said. "I have family." As I drove home from Dr. Chen's office, I practiced the words in my head. "Mom, Dad, I need to tell you something important. I've been diagnosed with breast cancer." I imagine them dropping everything to support me. I imagine my mother holding me while I cried. My father making practical plans to help with my treatment. I imagined Emma putting the wedding planning on hold to be there for her big sister. I had no idea that in less than 24 hours, my family would show me exactly where I ranked in their priorities. And it wasn't even close to where I thought I was. I drove to my parents' house in Mississauga on Friday evening. The entire 40-minute drive, I rehearsed what I was going to say. How do you tell the people who raised you that you have cancer? How do you explain that you need them now more than you've ever needed anyone? Mom's white Camry was in the driveway next to Dad's pickup truck, and I could see Emma's red Honda parked on the street. Perfect. Everyone was here. I could tell them all at once. I sat in my car for 5 minutes gathering courage. Through the living room window, I could see them all gathered around the coffee table, which was covered with wedding planning materials. Mom was holding up fabric samples while Emma gestured excitedly. Dad was looking at what appeared to be invoices, his reading glasses perched on the end of his nose. They looked so happy, so normal. In about 10 minutes, I was going to shatter that normalcy forever. I walked up the familiar front steps and used my key to let myself in. The house smelled like Mom's famous lasagna and the vanilla candles she always lit in the evening. "Sarah," Mom called from the living room. Perfect timing. "We're trying to decide between ivory and champagne for the table linens." I hung my coat in the front closet and took a deep breath. "Actually, I need to talk to you all about something important." "Can it wait 20 minutes? Emma asked without looking up from her phone. "We're FaceTiming with the florist in Vancouver, and Jake's parents want to approve the centerpieces." "It's kind of urgent," I said, my voice already shaking. Dad looked up from his paperwork. "What's wrong, kiddo? You look pale." I sat down on the edge of the recliner, facing the three of them on the couch. The wedding planning materials suddenly felt like barriers between us. "I went to the doctor this week," I began. "I found a lump during a self-exam, and I had some tests done." Mom's hand flew to her chest. "Oh honey, what did they say?" "It's cancer," I said simply. "Breast cancer. I'm going to need surgery and chemotherapy." The silence that followed was deafening. Mom's face went white. Dad removed his glasses and rubbed his eyes. Emma stared at me like I'd just spoken in a foreign language. "Are you sure?" Mom whispered. "Did you get a second opinion?" "The biopsy was conclusive," I said. "I met with an oncologist yesterday. Her name is Dr. Chun, and she's one of the best in Toronto." "Oh my God," Emma breathed. "Sarah, I'm so sorry. This is terrible." For a moment I felt relief. They understood. They were going to rally around me. Then Mom asked the question that changed everything. "When do you start treatment?" "I need surgery within the next 2 to 3 weeks, I explained. "Dr. Chan says timing is critical with this type of cancer. The longer we wait, the more chance it has to spread." Dad was already calculating dates in his head. I could see him counting on his fingers. 2 to 3 weeks, he repeated slowly. "Sarah, that's Emma's wedding weekend," Mom finished, her voice barely audible. The air in the room shifted. I felt like I was watching my family through glass, seeing their priorities rearrange themselves in real time. "There has to be another option," Emma said quickly. "Can't you wait until after the wedding? It's just 2 more weeks." I stared at my sister. "Emma, it's cancer. The doctor said every week matters." "But surely a few more days won't make that much difference," Mom said, leaning forward. "Honey, we've been planning this wedding for 2 years. All the relatives are flying in from Vancouver and Calgary. Jake's grandparents are coming from Scotland." "I understand that," I said, feeling tears starting to burn behind my eyes. "But this is my life we're talking about." Dad cleared his throat. "Sarah, be reasonable. Can't you find another doctor? Someone who has an opening after Emma's wedding?" "Dr. Chan is one of the best oncologists in Canada," I said. "I'm not switching doctors to accommodate a wedding." "You're being dramatic," Emma snapped. "Cancer treatment happens all the time. Surely they can work around one weekend." "Dramatic." She called me dramatic for having cancer. "Do you hear yourself right now?" I asked, standing up. "I'm asking my family to support me through the scariest thing that's ever happened to me. And you're worried about table linens? That's not fair," Mom said, tears in her eyes. "Of course we're worried about you. But Emma's only going to get married once. Why does this have to happen now? Why couldn't you have found it earlier or later? Why does it have to conflict with Emma's wedding?" I stared at my mother. She was actually upset with me for getting cancer at an inconvenient time. I didn't choose when to get cancer, Mom, I said quietly. We know that, Dad said, standing up to pace. But we've already put deposits down on everything. The venue, the caterer, the photographer. We're talking about $50,000 that we'll lose if we have to postpone. Plus, all the guests have already made travel arrangements, Emma added. Jake's family will be furious if we change the date now. His mother has been planning this for months. I looked around at my family. These people who I'd loved and supported my entire life. These people who I thought would move mountains for me in a crisis. Instead, they were asking me to move my cancer surgery for their convenience. I can't believe you're making me choose between my health and Emma's wedding, I said. We're not making you choose anything, Mom said through her tears. We're just asking you to consider the impact on everyone else. What about the impact on me? I asked. What about the fact that I'm terrified and I need my family? We'll be there for you, Dad said. After the wedding. We'll take time off work and help you through treatment. After the wedding, I repeated. After Emma's perfect day is preserved. Sarah, please, Emma said. You know how important this is to me. Can't you just wait 2 more weeks? 2 more weeks. 2 more weeks for cancer cells to potentially spread through my body, while my sister danced at her reception. You know what? I said, grabbing my purse. I need to think about this. Where are you going? Mom asked. Home. To figure out if I have a family, or just roommates I grew up with. I walked toward the front door, hoping someone would call after me. Hoping someone would say that my life was more important than a party. But the house stayed silent except for Emma's sniffling. As I drove home, I realized that I'd been living a lie my entire life. I thought my family loved me. I thought when push came to shove, they'd choose me. Instead, they'd chosen a wedding. They'd chosen one perfect day over my lifetime. And for the first time in 28 years, I understood exactly where I stood in my family. I was expendable. I made it exactly 3 blocks from my parents' house before I had to pull over. I was crying so hard I couldn't see the road. I sat in my car in the parking lot of a Tim Hortons, sobbing until my chest ached and my throat was raw. How had my life become this? 28 years old, facing cancer alone because my family couldn't be inconvenienced by my medical emergency. I sat there for an hour, replaying the conversation in my head. Maybe I'd been too harsh. Maybe I should have been more understanding about the wedding complications. Maybe I was being selfish. Then I remembered Emma calling me dramatic for having cancer, and the anger came flooding back. I drove home to my little 1-bedroom condo in downtown Toronto. It had always felt cozy before, but that night it felt impossibly small and lonely. I ordered Chinese takeout, poured myself a large glass of wine, and called the one person I knew would understand. Maya Patel had been my best friend since our first day at the University of Toronto. We'd been roommates, study partners, and each other's emotional support through every crisis for the past 10 years. She was now a successful immigration lawyer, married to her college sweetheart Dev, with twin 3-year-old boys who called me Auntie Sarah. Hey girl, Maya answered on the second ring. How did it go with your family? I told Maya about my diagnosis earlier that week. She'd been incredible, researching treatment options, offering to drive me to appointments, and generally being everything my biological family wasn't. They want me to wait, I said, and then I started crying again. Wait for what? Maya's voice got sharp. They want me to delay my surgery until after Emma's wedding. They said 2 more weeks won't matter. The silence on the other end of the phone was deafening. Sarah, Maya said slowly, please tell me you're joking. I wish I was. They want you to delay cancer surgery for a wedding? Emma called me dramatic. My mom asked why I couldn't have gotten cancer at a more convenient time. My dad is worried about losing $50,000 in deposits. I'm coming over, Maya said immediately. Maya, you don't have to. I'm already putting on my shoes. Dev can handle bedtime. I'll be there in 20 minutes. She hung up before I could protest. True to her word, Maya knocked on my door exactly 20 minutes later, carrying a bag from our favorite Indian restaurant and a bottle of wine. Emergency samosas, she announced, pushing past me into the apartment. And wine. Lots of wine. We sat on my couch, eating takeout and drinking wine while I told her every horrible detail of the conversation with my family. Maya listened without interrupting, but I could see her getting angrier with every word. I can't believe them, she finally said. I mean, I knew your family had issues, but this is beyond anything I could have imagined. Maybe they're right though, I said, picking at my SOG painter. Maybe 2 weeks won't make that much difference. Maybe I'm being selfish. Maya grabbed my shoulders and turned me to face her. Sarah Elizabeth Mitchell, listen to me very carefully. You are not being selfish. You have cancer. Cancer doesn't wait for convenient timing. Your family is asking you to risk your life for a party. It's Emma's wedding. It's a party, Maya interrupted firmly. An expensive, elaborate party. And your family is choosing that party over your survival. There is nothing selfish about prioritizing your health. I started crying again. I just never thought they'd choose her over me when it really mattered. Oh honey, Maya said, pulling me into a hug. They've been choosing her over you your whole life. This is just the first time the stakes were life and death. She was right and we both knew it. What should I do? I asked. You should have the surgery when your doctor recommends it, Maya said without hesitation. You should choose yourself for once in your life. But what if they never forgive me? What if you die because you waited for their approval? Maya shot back. Sarah, what if the cancer spreads in those 2 weeks? What if delaying surgery costs you your life? How will you feel then about protecting Emma's perfect day? The thought terrified me, but it also clarified everything. I need to call someone, I said, reaching for my phone. I scrolled through my contacts until I found the number for Jennifer Walsh, my mentor at work. Jennifer was the chief marketing officer at a major healthcare company, and she'd taken me under her wing when I'd first started my career. She was brilliant, successful, and one of the strongest women I'd ever met. I'd also heard rumors that she was a breast cancer survivor, though she'd never talked about it openly. Sarah, Jennifer answered on the first ring. Is everything okay? It's pretty late for a work call. Jennifer, I'm sorry to bother you, but I need advice, and I think you might understand better than anyone. What's going on? I took a deep breath. I was diagnosed with breast cancer this week. I need surgery immediately, but my family wants me to delay it for my sister's wedding. The silence stretched for so long I thought the call had dropped. Jennifer? Are you there? I'm here, she said, and her voice had completely changed. It was softer, more vulnerable than I'd ever heard it. Sarah, how old are you? 28. I was 29 when I was diagnosed, she said quietly. 15 years ago. My heart stopped. You had breast cancer? Aggressive invasive ductal carcinoma. Just like you, I'm guessing, based on the urgency. Jennifer, I had no idea. I don't talk about it much, but Sarah, listen to me very carefully. When they tell you timing matters with breast cancer, they mean it. Every day you wait is a day that cancer has to spread. Every week increases your risk of metastasis. But my family says 2 weeks won't matter. Your family is wrong, Jennifer said firmly. Sarah, I'm going to tell you something I've never told anyone at work. When I was diagnosed, my then fiancé asked me to delay my surgery by 1 week because it conflicted with his brother's graduation from medical school. What did you do? I had the surgery, and I broke up with him 2 weeks later. I gasped. Really? Really? Because anyone who would ask you to risk your life for their convenience doesn't deserve to be in your life. Period. But they're my family. Sarah, family isn't about blood. Family is about the people who show up when you need them most. The people who put your well-being above their own comfort. The people who love you enough to sacrifice their plans for your health. I looked at Maya, who was listening to my side of the conversation while stress-eating samosas. What if I choose the surgery and they never forgive me? I asked. Then they were never your family to begin with, Jennifer said gently. Sarah, I want you to do something for me. I want you to imagine yourself in 5 years. Do you want to be the woman who chose her health and her future? Or do you want to be the woman who risked everything to avoid disappointing people who don't deserve your loyalty? The answer was obvious. Schedule the surgery, Jennifer continued. I'll talk to HR about getting you extended medical leave. I'll personally make sure your job is protected. And Sarah, yes, you're not going through this alone. I'll be with you every step of the way. After I hung up, Maya and I sat in silence for a few minutes. She's right, I finally said. About what? About family being the people who show up when you need them. Maya smiled through her tears. Does this mean you're having the surgery? I'm having the surgery. Good. Dev and I will be there for everything. Doctor appointments, surgery day, chemo treatments, whatever you need. You don't have to do that. We want to do that. That's what family does. That night, for the first time since my diagnosis, I felt like I wasn't facing cancer alone. I had Maya and Dev. I had Jennifer. I had coworkers who cared about me and a boss who would protect my job. I had a chosen family that was worth more than all the blood relatives who couldn't be bothered to choose my life over a party. The next morning, I called Dr. Chen's office and scheduled my surgery for the Saturday of Emma's wedding weekend. I also sent a text to my parents and Emma. Surgery is scheduled for May 18th. I understand if you can't be there. Emma texted back immediately. Sarah, you're being incredibly selfish. I hope you can live with ruining my wedding. My mom sent. We're very disappointed in your decision. We'll try to visit you in the hospital if we can get away from wedding activities. My dad didn't respond at all. But you know what? For the first time in my life, I didn't care about disappointing them. Because I'd finally learned the difference between being loved and being useful. And I chose to be loved by people who actually knew how to do it. I made it exactly 3 blocks from my parents' house before I had to pull over. I was crying so hard I couldn't see the road. I sat in my car in the parking lot of a Tim Hortons, sobbing until my chest ached and my throat was raw. How had my life become this? 28 years old, facing cancer alone because my family couldn't be inconvenienced by my medical emergency. I sat there for an hour, replaying the conversation in my head. Maybe I'd been too harsh. Maybe I should have been more understanding about the wedding complications. Maybe I was being selfish. Then I remembered Emma calling me dramatic for having cancer, and the anger came flooding back. I drove home to my little 1-bedroom condo in downtown Toronto. It had always felt cozy before, but that night it felt impossibly small and lonely. I ordered Chinese takeout, poured myself a large glass of wine, and called the one person I knew would understand. Maya Patel had been my best friend since our first day at the University of Toronto. We'd been roommates, study partners, and each other's emotional support through every crisis for the past 10 years. She was now a successful immigration lawyer, married to her college sweetheart Dev, with twin 3-year-old boys who called me Auntie Sarah. Hey girl, Maya answered on the second ring. How did it go with your family? I told Maya about my diagnosis earlier that week. She'd been incredible, researching treatment options, offering to drive me to appointments, and generally being everything my biological family wasn't. They want me to wait, I said, and then I started crying again. Wait for what? Maya's voice got sharp. They want me to delay my surgery until after Emma's wedding. They said 2 more weeks won't matter. The silence on the other end of the phone was deafening. Sarah, Maya said slowly, please tell me you're joking. I wish I was. They want you to delay cancer surgery for a wedding? Emma called me dramatic. My mom asked why I couldn't have gotten cancer at a more convenient time. My dad is worried about losing $50,000 in deposits. I'm coming over, Maya said immediately. Maya, you don't have to. I'm already putting on my shoes. Dev can handle bedtime. I'll be there in 20 minutes. She hung up before I could protest. True to her word, Maya knocked on my door exactly 20 minutes later, carrying a bag from our favorite Indian restaurant and a bottle of wine. Emergency samosas, she announced, pushing past me into the apartment. And wine. Lots of wine. We sat on my couch, eating takeout and drinking wine while I told her every horrible detail of the conversation with my family. Maya listened without interrupting, but I could see her getting angrier with every word. I can't believe them, she finally said. I mean, I knew your family had issues, but this is beyond anything I could have imagined. Maybe they're right though, I said, picking at my SOG painter. Maybe 2 weeks won't make that much difference. Maybe I'm being selfish. Maya grabbed my shoulders and turned me to face her. Sarah Elizabeth Mitchell, listen to me very carefully. You are not being selfish. You have cancer. Cancer doesn't wait for convenient timing. Your family is asking you to risk your life for a party. It's Emma's wedding. It's a party, Maya interrupted firmly. An expensive, elaborate party. And your family is choosing that party over your survival. There is nothing selfish about prioritizing your health. I started crying again. I just never thought they'd choose her over me when it really mattered. Oh honey, Maya said, pulling me into a hug. They've been choosing her over you your whole life. This is just the first time the stakes were life and death. She was right and we both knew it. What should I do? I asked. You should have the surgery when your doctor recommends it, Maya said without hesitation. You should choose yourself for once in your life. But what if they never forgive me? What if you die because you waited for their approval? Maya shot back. Sarah, what if the cancer spreads in those 2 weeks? What if delaying surgery costs you your life? How will you feel then about protecting Emma's perfect day? The thought terrified me, but it also clarified everything. I need to call someone, I said, reaching for my phone. I scrolled through my contacts until I found the number for Jennifer Walsh, my mentor at work. Jennifer was the chief marketing officer at a major healthcare company, and she'd taken me under her wing when I'd first started my career. She was brilliant, successful, and one of the strongest women I'd ever met. I'd also heard rumors that she was a breast cancer survivor, though she'd never talked about it openly. Sarah, Jennifer answered on the first ring. Is everything okay? It's pretty late for a work call. Jennifer, I'm sorry to bother you, but I need advice, and I think you might understand better than anyone. What's going on? I took a deep breath. I was diagnosed with breast cancer this week. I need surgery immediately, but my family wants me to delay it for my sister's wedding. The silence stretched for so long I thought the call had dropped. Jennifer? Are you there? I'm here, she said, and her voice had completely changed. It was softer, more vulnerable than I'd ever heard it. Sarah, how old are you? 28. I was 29 when I was diagnosed, she said quietly. 15 years ago. My heart stopped. You had breast cancer? Aggressive invasive ductal carcinoma. Just like you, I'm guessing, based on the urgency. Jennifer, I had no idea. I don't talk about it much, but Sarah, listen to me very carefully. When they tell you timing matters with breast cancer, they mean it. Every day you wait is a day that cancer has to spread. Every week increases your risk of metastasis. But my family says 2 weeks won't matter. Your family is wrong, Jennifer said firmly. Sarah, I'm going to tell you something I've never told anyone at work. When I was diagnosed, my then-fiancé asked me to delay my surgery by 1 week because it conflicted with his brother's graduation from medical school. What did you do? I had the surgery. And I broke up with him 2 weeks later. I gasped. Really? Really? Because anyone who would ask you to risk your life for their convenience doesn't deserve to be in your life. Period. But they're my family. Sarah, family isn't about blood. Family is about the people who show up when you need them most. The people who put your well-being above their own comfort. The people who love you enough to sacrifice their plans for your health. I looked at Maya, who was listening to my side of the conversation while stress-eating samosas. What if I choose the surgery and they never forgive me? I asked. Then they were never your family to begin with, Jennifer said gently. Sarah, I want you to do something for me. I want you to imagine yourself in 5 years. Do you want to be the woman who chose her health and her future? Or do you want to be the woman who risked everything to avoid disappointing people who don't deserve your loyalty? The answer was obvious. Schedule the surgery, Jennifer continued. I'll talk to HR about getting you extended medical leave. I'll personally make sure your job is protected. And Sarah, yes, you're not going through this alone. I'll be with you every step of the way. After I hung up, Maya and I sat in silence for a few minutes. She's right, I finally said. About what? About family being the people who show up when you need them. Maya smiled through her tears. Does this mean you're having the surgery? I'm having the surgery. Good. Dev and I will be there for everything. Doctor appointments, surgery day, chemo treatments, whatever you need. You don't have to do that. We want to do that. That's what family does. That night, for the first time since my diagnosis, I felt like I wasn't facing cancer alone. I had Maya and Dev. I had Jennifer. I had coworkers who cared about me and a boss who would protect my job. I had a chosen family that was worth more than all the blood relatives who couldn't be bothered to choose my life over a party. The next morning, I called Dr. Chen's office and scheduled my surgery for the Saturday of Emma's wedding weekend. I also sent a text to my parents and Emma. Surgery is scheduled for May 18th. I understand if you can't be there. Emma texted back immediately. Sarah, you're being incredibly selfish. I hope you can live with ruining my wedding. My mom sent. We're very disappointed in your decision. We'll try to visit you in the hospital if we can get away from wedding activities. My dad didn't respond at all. But you know what? For the first time in my life, I didn't care about disappointing them. Because I'd finally learned the difference between being loved and being useful. And I chose to be loved by people who actually knew how to do it. The next 6 months of chemotherapy were simultaneously the hardest and most transformative period of my entire life. I'd expected the physical challenges. The nausea, the fatigue, the hair loss. What I hadn't expected was how chemotherapy would strip away every facade I'd built around my relationships and show me exactly who people really were when I needed them most. My chosen family didn't just show up. They orchestrated my entire support system like a military operation. Maya created what she called the Sarah Care Calendar on Google Docs. Every day of my treatment cycle was assigned to someone different. Maya took the big days, the chemo sessions where I needed someone to drive me and sit with me for hours. Jennifer handled the follow-up appointments and the days when I was too sick to function. Dev covered meal prep, showing up every Sunday with containers of soup, pasta, and his famous butter chicken. Mrs. Chan appointed herself my daily wellness check. Every morning at exactly 9 o'clock, she'd knock on my door with herbal tea and kanji. She taught herself to say, "How are you feeling today, Sarah?" in English, though her pronunciation was adorable. Some days when the chemo brain fog was bad, We just sit together in comfortable silence while she held my hand. My work colleagues were incredible. Jennifer had arranged for me to work from home during treatment, and my team picked up my projects without complaint. They sent weekly care packages filled with fuzzy socks, tea, books, and handwritten notes of encouragement. Even people I barely knew stepped up. My downstairs neighbor, Robert, started picking up my mail and groceries without being asked. The barista at my local Starbucks, Kelly, always had my favorite tea ready when she saw me coming, and refused to let me pay for it. But the most unexpected support came from other cancer patients I met during treatment. During my second chemo session, I met Linda Morrison, a 53-year-old teacher who was also dealing with breast cancer. She took one look at my tear-streaked face and said, "First time. Is it that obvious?" I asked, "Honey, you look like I felt 3 months ago. Terrified and alone." "I'm not alone," I said quickly. "My friend Maya is in the parking lot. She's coming back with coffee." "That's not what I meant," Linda said gently. "You look like someone who's been abandoned by the people who were supposed to love you most." I started crying right there in the treatment center, hooked up to an 4-bag of adriamycin and Cytoxan. Linda moved her recliner closer to mine. "Let me guess. Family drama." Through tears, I told her about the wedding, the choice, the complete silence from my parents and Emma. "They chose a party over your life," Linda said flatly. "And now they're probably telling themselves you chose surgery over family." "How did you know?" "Because toxic families rewrite history to make themselves the victims. They'll convince themselves that you were being dramatic, that you could have waited, that you chose to hurt them." Linda introduced me to what she called the Chemo Warriors group. 8 women, ranging in age from 26 to 68, all fighting different cancers, all dealing with varying degrees of family dysfunction. There was Janet, whose husband had left her 2 weeks after her diagnosis because he couldn't handle the stress. Maria, whose mother-in-law had suggested her breast cancer was God's punishment for working instead of staying home with her children. Patricia, whose adult children had stopped visiting because her illness was too depressing for their kids to see. These women became my sisters in the truest sense. We shared treatment schedules, side effect remedies, and brutal honesty about the people who disappointed us. But more importantly, we celebrated every small victory together. Clear scans, good blood work, days when we felt human again. 3 months into treatment, something unexpected happened. I started a blog. It began as a way to process my emotions and document my journey. I called it Chosen Family Chronicles, and wrote about the difference between the people who share your DNA and the people who share your life. My first post was titled, "The Day My Family Chose a Wedding Over My Surgery." I wrote about the diagnosis, the impossible choice, the abandonment, and the overwhelming love I'd received from my chosen family. I published it on a Tuesday night and went to bed expecting maybe Maya and Jennifer to read it. I woke up Wednesday morning to 3,000 shares and hundreds of comments from women, sharing their own stories of family betrayal during health crises. My mother missed my mastectomy because she didn't want to cancel her cruise. My sister told me my ovarian cancer was attention-seeking behavior. My husband left me during chemo because I wasn't fun anymore. But mixed in with the heartbreak were stories of chosen families stepping up. Friends who became sisters, neighbors who became lifelines, co-workers who became advocates. My second post, "What Real Love Looks Like During Cancer Treatment," went viral. It featured photos of my hospital room filled with flowers, Dev's homemade meal containers, Mrs. Chen's daily tea deliveries, and the Sarah Care calendar that had kept me functioning. The blog exploded. Within 2 months, I had 50,000 followers and was getting interview requests from major media outlets. Women were starting their own chosen family support networks. Cancer centers were sharing my posts with newly diagnosed patients. But the most meaningful response came from an unexpected source. Jennifer called me on a Thursday evening in August, 4 months into my chemo treatment. Sarah, I just got off the phone with David Richardson, she said. Her voice sounded strange. Excited but also nervous. Who's David Richardson? The CEO of Healing Path Healthcare. It's one of the largest patient advocacy organizations in North America. My heart started racing. Why was he calling you? Because he's been following your blog. He wants to meet with you about a position. What kind of position? Vice President of Patient Advocacy and Communications. It's a newly created role focused on supporting patients who don't have family support systems. The salary is double what you're making now, plus full medical benefits and the opportunity to travel speaking at conferences. I sat down hard on my couch. Are you serious? Dead serious. He said your blog is exactly the kind of authentic voice they need to reach patients who feel abandoned by traditional support systems. The interview took place the following week via video call. David Richardson was a soft-spoken man in his 60s who'd started Healing Path after his own wife died of pancreatic cancer. Your writing captures something most healthcare organizations miss, he said. The reality that family support isn't guaranteed, and that patients need alternative networks to survive treatment. I just wrote about my experience, I said, and that experience is shared by millions of people. We want to build programs based on your chosen family model. Support networks for patients whose biological families can't or won't step up. The job offer came 2 days later. VP salary, full benefits, and the chance to turn my pain into purpose for other people facing similar situations. But the biggest revelation came during my final chemotherapy session in October. I was sitting in my usual recliner, getting my last dose of Herceptin, when Dr. Chand stopped by to check on me. Sarah, I wanted to share something with you, she said, pulling up a chair. I've been reviewing your pathology reports from surgery, and there's something important you should know. My heart stopped. Is everything okay? Everything is more than okay. But the timing of your surgery was absolutely critical. The pathology showed that your cancer was more aggressive than we initially thought. If you had waited even 2 more weeks, it would have spread to your lymph nodes. The chemo room seemed to spin around me. What does that mean? It means waiting for your sister's wedding could have turned your stage 2 cancer into stage 3 or 4. It could have changed your prognosis from excellent to guarded. I stared at her. So choosing surgery over the wedding saved your life, Dr. Chand finished. Literally saved your life. I called Maya from the parking lot, sobbing so hard I could barely speak. Maya, Dr. Chand just told me that if I'd waited for Emma's wedding, the cancer would have spread. My family asked me to make a choice that could have killed me. Oh honey, Maya whispered. But you didn't wait. You chose yourself. That night I wrote my most powerful blog post yet. The choice that saved my life. I detailed Dr. Chand's revelation and what it meant about the decision my family had asked me to make. The post was shared over 100,000 times in 24 hours. But more importantly, I finally understood that my family's abandonment wasn't a loss. It was a liberation. Because sometimes the people who are supposed to love you most will ask you to sacrifice everything for their comfort. And sometimes the people who choose to love you will sacrifice their comfort for your everything. I'd spent 28 years in the first kind of relationship. I was ready to spend the rest of my life in the second. The invitation arrived on a Tuesday in November, 6 months after my surgery and 1 month after I'd finished chemotherapy. It was cream-colored cardstock with gold embossing, the kind of expensive stationery my parents had always favored for important events. But this wasn't a wedding invitation. This was for Emma and Jake's official reception celebration. Apparently, they'd had a small, intimate ceremony during what the invitation delicately called unexpected family circumstances. Now they wanted a proper party to celebrate with everyone who'd been unable to attend the original celebration. The invitation was addressed to Sarah Mitchell and guest, in my mother's perfect calligraphy. No mention of my cancer. No acknowledgement of why I'd been unable to attend. Just a polite fiction that preserved everyone's comfort. I stared at the invitation for 10 minutes, feeling a mix of rage and dark amusement. Maya found me at my kitchen table still holding the cardstock. "Let me guess," she said, reading my expression. "Your family wants to pretend the last 6 months never happened?" I handed her the invitation. She read it twice, then set it down with the kind of careful control that meant she was furious. "Are you going?" she asked. "I don't know," I said honestly. Part of me wants to ignore it completely. But part of me wants to see what they do when I show up. "What do you mean?" "Maya, I'm not the same person who left their house crying 6 months ago. I'm not the desperate, people-pleasing daughter who would sacrifice her health for their approval." That was an understatement. The past 6 months had transformed me in ways I was still discovering. The blog had given me a platform and a voice. The new job had given me financial independence and professional respect. Most importantly, surviving cancer and family abandonment had given me an unshakable sense of my own worth. I was no longer someone who begged for love. I was someone who recognized it when it appeared and dismissed it when it didn't. "If you go," Maya said carefully, "what's your goal?" "Closure," I said immediately. "I want to see if they'll acknowledge what they did. If they'll apologize. If they've learned anything from watching me thrive without them. And if they haven't, then I'll know exactly what I'm walking away from." I decided to attend the reception. But I wasn't going as the old Sarah, desperate for family approval. I was going as the new Sarah, successful and self-possessed, with nothing left to prove and nothing left to lose. I bought a stunning black dress, the kind of elegant, expensive outfit I could now afford thanks to my VP salary. I got my hair done professionally. My post-chemo hair had grown back thicker and curlier than before, and I loved the way it framed my face. I looked healthy, confident, and undeniably successful. Most importantly, I looked like someone who had moved on. The reception was held at the same lakeside venue in Mississauga where Emma's original wedding was supposed to take place. As I pulled into the parking lot, I could see the party through the floor-to-ceiling windows. The room was filled with relatives, family, friends, and Jake's wealthy connections, all mingling under crystal chandeliers. I sat in my car for 5 minutes, gathering my courage. My phone buzzed with a text from Maya. "Remember, you're not there to fix anything. You're there to see who they really are." I walked into the venue with my head high and my shoulders back. I'd learned during chemo that confidence wasn't about feeling fearless. It was about feeling afraid and doing what needed to be done anyway. The first person to spot me was my cousin Rachel from Vancouver. Her face went through a series of expressions: surprise, confusion, and then something that looked like relief. "Sarah," she said, rushing over to hug me. "Oh my God, you look incredible. How are you feeling?" "I'm doing really well," I said, surprised by the genuine warmth in her voice. "Thank you for asking. I was so worried when I heard about your diagnosis. I wanted to call, but your mom said you needed space to focus on treatment." My smile froze. My mom said I needed space? She said you were handling everything privately and didn't want visitors or calls. I respected that, but I thought about you constantly. I felt a cold rage building in my chest. My mother had told my extended family that I didn't want contact during treatment. She'd cut off potential support to maintain the fiction that everything was fine. "Rachel," I said carefully, "I would have loved to hear from you during treatment. I didn't ask for space from anyone." Her face went pale. "But your mom said." My mom said a lot of things that weren't true. Before Rachel could respond, I heard my father's voice across the room. Ladies and gentlemen, if I could have your attention, he said, tapping a champagne glass with a knife. I'd like to say a few words about my beautiful daughter Emma and her wonderful husband Jake. The room quieted as people turned toward the small stage where Dad stood with a microphone. Emma and Jake moved to stand beside him, both glowing with happiness and champagne. 6 months ago, Emma and Jake had a beautiful, intimate ceremony, Dad began. Tonight, we're celebrating their love with all the people who matter most to them. I watched from the back of the room as he launched into a speech about family, love, and the importance of having your loved ones by your side during life's most important moments. The irony was suffocating. Family is everything, Dad continued, his voice warm and emotional. When life gets difficult, when challenges arise, family is what gets you through. Emma and Jake are lucky to have such a strong support system surrounding them as they start their married life. I couldn't listen to another word. I started walking toward the front of the room. People noticed my movement and began turning to look. I saw my mother's face go white when she spotted me. Emma's eyes widened in shock. Dad was still talking about the importance of family support when he finally noticed the disturbance in the crowd. He followed their gazes and saw me approaching the stage. "Sarah," he said into the microphone, his voice uncertain. "You came." "I did," I said loudly enough for the room to hear. I wouldn't want to miss a speech about the importance of family support. The room had gone completely silent. Everyone could sense the tension, even if they didn't understand it. That's when my phone rang. In the absolute silence of that reception hall, with 200 people staring at me and my father frozen on stage with a microphone, my phone started ringing with the distinctive tone I'd assigned to Dr. Chen's office. I looked at the caller ID, Toronto General Hospital. "Excuse me," I said to the room. "I need to take this call." I answered the phone right there in front of everyone. "Hello, Sarah. This is Dr. Rebecca Chen," came the familiar voice through the speaker. "I hope I'm not calling at a bad time, but I have some exciting news I couldn't wait to share." "Not at all, Dr. Chen," I said clearly. "What's the news?" "Your case has been selected for publication in the Journal of Clinical Oncology. Your story about the importance of immediate treatment for aggressive breast cancer is going to help save lives. The journal wants to feature your case as an example of why patients should never delay surgery, even for important family events." The room was so quiet you could have heard a pin drop. "Additionally," Dr. Chen continued, "you've been invited to speak at the International Breast Cancer Research Conference in Chicago next month. They want you to present your case and discuss the critical importance of treatment timing." I could see my parents' faces going from confused to horrified as they began to understand what Dr. Chen was saying. "That's wonderful news, Dr. Chen," I said. "Can you remind me again what would have happened if I had delayed my surgery by 2 weeks?" "Absolutely. Based on your pathology reports, delaying surgery by even 2 weeks would have allowed the cancer to spread to your lymph nodes, potentially making it metastatic. Your decision to proceed with immediate surgery, despite family pressure to delay, literally saved your life." The silence in the room was deafening. "Thank you for calling with such exciting news," I said. "I look forward to sharing my story at the conference." I hung up and looked around the room. 200 people were staring at me with various expressions of shock, understanding, and horror. My parents stood frozen on the stage. Emma had gone completely pale. "I'm sorry," I said to the crowd, my voice carrying clearly in the silence. "Where were we?" "Oh yes, Dad was talking about the importance of family support during life's most difficult moments." I turned to face my father directly. "Please continue your speech about how family is what gets you through challenges. I'd love to hear more about that." The silence that followed my challenge to my father stretched for what felt like an eternity. 200 people stood frozen, champagne glasses halfway to their lips, as the full weight of what they just heard settled over the room. My father's face had gone from confused to pale to a sickly shade of green. The microphone trembled in his hand as he finally understood what Dr. Chen's call meant. What everyone in that room now knew. His daughter had been fighting for her life while he worried about wedding deposits. "Sarah," he whispered into the microphone, his voice barely audible. "We didn't know." "Didn't know what, Dad?" I asked, my voice carrying clearly through the silent room. "Didn't you know that cancer doesn't wait for convenient timing? Didn't know that when a doctor says surgery is urgent, they mean it? Or didn't know that your daughter needed you?" I could see family, friends, and relatives processing what they'd overheard. Whispered conversations began at the edges of the room, as people put together the timeline. Emma's original wedding date. My surgery. The family circumstances that had forced a smaller ceremony. My cousin Rachel stepped forward, her voice shaking with emotion. "Sarah, are you saying that your cancer surgery was scheduled the same day as Emma's wedding?" she asked loudly enough for everyone to hear. "That's exactly what I'm saying," I replied. "My oncologist gave me a 2-week window for surgery. Emma's wedding fell within that window. I was asked to choose." "And you chose surgery," Rachel said, understanding the dawning on her face. "I chose to live," I corrected. "And as Dr. Chen just confirmed for everyone here, that choice saved my life." Emma finally found her voice from the stage. "Sarah, that's not fair. You're making it sound like we wanted you to die." The room gasped at her words. Even she seemed to realize how that sounded. "Didn't you?" I asked quietly. "When you asked me to delay life-saving surgery for a party, what exactly did you think would happen?" "It's not a party," Emma said desperately. "It's my wedding. The most important day of my life." "And that surgery was the most important day of mine," I replied. "But somehow, your party was more important than my life." I turned to address the entire room. 6 months ago, I was diagnosed with aggressive breast cancer. When I told my family, their first concern wasn't my health. It was how my surgery might affect wedding planning. Murmurs of shock rippled through the crowd. I was asked to delay treatment. I was told that 2 weeks wouldn't matter. I was called dramatic for wanting immediate surgery. I was told I was being selfish for choosing my health over Emma's special day. I could see Jake's family members exchanging horrified glances. These were people who had never met me before tonight, and their first impression was learning that my own family had abandoned me during cancer treatment. When I chose surgery over the wedding, I continued, my family chose silence over support. During 3 days in the hospital, 6 months of chemotherapy, and the most frightening period of my life, not one member of my immediate family called, texted, or visited. My mother finally stepped forward from the side of the stage, tears streaming down her face. "Sarah, please," she said. "This isn't the place for this conversation." "Isn't it?" I asked. "This is a party celebrating family and love, right? I think everyone here deserves to know what your version of family love looks like." I pulled out my phone and held it up. "Would you like me to read the only text message I received from you during my entire cancer treatment?" I asked. "Here it is. Hope surgery went well. Emma's honeymoon photos are beautiful. She looks so happy." The crowd's shocked gasps were audible now. Several people had their hands over their mouths in horror. "That was it," I continued. 6 months of fighting for my life, and my mother's only communication was to tell me how happy my sister looked on her honeymoon. Jake's father, a distinguished man in his 70s, stepped forward with a look of disgust. "I'm sorry," he said loudly. "Are you telling us that this young woman went through cancer treatment alone because you people couldn't be bothered to support her?" My father tried to speak into the microphone again. "It's more complicated than—" "No," Jake's father interrupted. "It's really not complicated at all. Your daughter had cancer. You chose a party. It's exactly that simple. The crowd was fully engaged now, with people openly staring at my parents and Emma with expressions ranging from shock to disgust. But that's not even the best part, I said, feeling a surge of satisfaction as I prepared to deliver the final blow. Would you like to know what I've been doing during these 6 months while my family pretended I didn't exist? I didn't wait for an answer. I started a blog called Chosen Family Chronicles about surviving cancer without family support. It now has over 200,000 followers. I've been featured in major media outlets sharing my story about the difference between biological family and chosen family. I could see comprehension dawning on several faces. People were pulling out their phones, probably searching for my blog. Last month, I was hired as Vice President of Patient Advocacy at Healing Path Healthcare, one of the largest patient support organizations in North America. My job is to help people who don't have family support during medical crises. Jake's mother, an elegant woman who clearly valued social status, looked absolutely mortified to be associated with my family through marriage. Next month, I'll be speaking at the International Breast Cancer Research Conference about the critical importance of immediate treatment. My case is being published in medical journals as an example of why patients should never delay surgery for social events. I paused to let that sink in before delivering the final revelation. And in 6 weeks I'm marrying Dr. Alex Chan, a brilliant cardiologist and the grandson of my wonderful neighbor Mrs. Chan, who brought me healing soup every day during treatment while my own family was too busy celebrating to remember I existed. The room erupted in murmurs. I was engaged to a doctor. I had a successful career, a platform, and a future filled with people who actually loved me. So thank you, I said, looking directly at my parents and Emma, for showing me exactly what your love was worth. Because once I stopped begging for scraps of affection from people who were incapable of giving it, I found an abundance of real love from people who knew how to show up. I turned back to the crowd. I want to apologize to all of you for witnessing this, I said. You came here to celebrate love and family. Instead, you've learned what happens when people mistake DNA for love and obligation for affection. I looked around the room one final time. To those of you who are actually family friends and not just social acquaintances, I want you to know that I'm thriving. I'm healthy, successful, and surrounded by people who love me enough to sacrifice their comfort for my well-being. That's what a real family looks like. I started walking toward the exit, then stopped and turned back. Oh, and Emma? Congratulations on your marriage. I hope Jake's family treats you better than you treated me. Because if they ever abandon you during a crisis the way you abandoned me, you'll finally understand what I went through. And Mom and Dad? Enjoy explaining tonight to your friends and neighbors. I'm sure they'll be very interested to learn what kind of parents choose a party over their daughter's life. I walked out of that reception hall with my head held high, leaving behind a room full of shocked guests, and a family that had finally been forced to confront the truth about their choices. As I reached my car, my phone started buzzing with text messages. But these weren't from my biological family. They were from my chosen family. Maya. How did it go? Are you okay? Jennifer. Whatever happened, I'm proud of you for going. Mrs. Chian. Alex says dinner is ready when you come home. We love you. And that's when I realized that I had already won. Not because I'd humiliated my family in public, but because I had built a life filled with people who would never make me choose between their comfort and my survival. I drove home to my real family, leaving my biological family to deal with the consequences of their choices. For the first time in 28 years, I felt completely free.